football. We are live. This is New York City. This is Wednesday, October 2nd. My name's Kay Adams, Nick Burleson, Peter Schrager, and Kyle Brandt. How was that all in 1 hour?
That was a hell of an hour. See you at the Emmys. Sorry, 60 minutes.
We've got Whiteboard Wednesday coming up. You never know what will happen, but we are one day away from football, so let's hit the lead block.
How about a lead block?
Yes, TNF action between the Rams and the Seahawks. Russell Wilson led Seattle to a decisive victory. Another one on the road in Arizona last week. Nobody's more impressed with Wilson's performance this season than his head coach. And with more on Seattle, here's Omar Ruiz.
Good morning, Kay. According to Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson is off to his best start ever. And the numbers certainly back it up. He's on pace to finish with the second highest completion percentage in NFL history. He's passing for more yards than he ever has. He's had 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and has the highest passer rating of anyone in the league, not named Patrick Mahomes. And as important as all of that is, his leadership this season has been as important. After Chris Carson fumbled each of the first 3 Seahawks games, Wilson reminded him last week that even the great Walter Payton had fumble issues early in his career. Carson responded by having the best game of his season thus far, 145 total yards, including 104 rushing. Wilson also said he spent extra time with Will Dissly, the tight end, who was returning to Arizona on Sunday, playing there for the first time since he had season-ending knee injury last season. And Dissly responded with a career-high 7 catches. So that relentless positivity we've always seen from Wilson paying off tangibly here in the first quarter of the season. Let's send it back to you now in the studio.
Well said and well outlined. Will Dissly balled out. Russell Wilson does it all. But look, he certainly has the work cut out for him against the Rams. Aaron Donald has sacked him 10.5 times in his career. That is more than any other quarterback Donald has faced. So Pete Carroll says that he thinks Wilson's playing the best football of his career. I actually made that point yesterday. I said if he beats the Rams on Thursday Night Football, his MVP campaign is launched. But Wilson, I feel like it does not get mentioned in the NFL discussion. So Schrags, do we take Russell Wilson for granted?
It's funny, Kay, because I could say that he's underrated. I could say that he's not appreciated, because the truth of the matter is when we do these conversations at the table, I go gaga over Patrick Mahomes. We hear a lot about Aaron Rodgers. We do a lot of talk about guys like Dak and Wentz in the East. And sometimes because they're in the Pacific Northwest, maybe Russell Wilson isn't mentioned in that conversation. Of course, Brady is always going to be the gold standard. But I can't say he's underappreciated when he's the highest paid player in all of football. That he broke the bank, and at no point in those negotiations did anyone say, now, wait a second, Russell Wilson doesn't deserve that. Like, the only concern was, do you invest that much money in the quarterback position, considering you can't pay anybody else if you do that? So I'm going to say, maybe the media, the narrative doesn't appreciate Russell Wilson for all he's done, but you've got 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 ring, and you're the highest paid player in all of football, and maybe the most beloved Seattle athlete since Ken Griffey Jr., and you actually won one of these things? I can't say that we take him for granted. This guy gets his, and he certainly is respected in his building, around the league, and in the Pacific Northwest.
I don't know what these other shows are doing. We hype Russell Wilson all the time. We love him here. I said to start the season, I think the Seahawks are going to win the West. And I think if I had to pick 5 quarterbacks out of 32, I will take Russ as one of my top 5. The problem is with the appreciation and the optics, we are now living in a Mahomes world, all right? He is still, Russ this year alone, is about 100 yards per game behind Mahomes, as well, 100. So it's like, guys, you know, in 1994, Pulp Fiction and Shawshank didn't win squat because everything went to Forrest Gump. Those are all-time great movies. You know how incredible it is to win a silver medal in the Olympics? You're the second best shot putter in the world. But that gold medal guy is incredible. That's Mahomes. Mahomes is doing Mahomes things every week. I don't take Russell Wilson for granted at all. I think he's going to have a home playoff game this year. But it's just that other object is so shiny. I think he doesn't end up in a lot of the segments that people do.
I'm right there with you guys. You know, me playing for the Seattle Seahawks and that being my hometown, over the last few years of us doing Good Morning Football, when I would do my underappreciated, and I say, there's a guy in Seattle. I know we're not paying attention to him. It's Russell Wilson. And people say, ah, Nate, come on, man. You're just being a homer, bro. You just want to talk about Seattle because that's your former team. I kept trying to get people to understand that Russell Wilson is one of the most consistent players in NFL history. In the first couple seasons, Trey, you mentioned it, he brought the Seattle Seahawks back to relevancy. We're talking to a city that loves the Sonics. It was GP and Sean Kemp, and then the Mariners with the big unit, Randy Johnson and Ken Griffey Jr. And Russell Wilson said, wait a minute, guys, we got a pretty damn good football team, too. And ever since then, he's been proving people wrong. Because when he went to those back-to-back Super Bowls, what do people say? All right, this is a good start to your career, but let's see if you can string together consistency.
Great defense on those teams.
Great defense.
Marshawn.
Great running back. And then all of a sudden, he starts stringing together season after season after season at a high level.
Yes.
I remember a couple seasons ago, he accounted for 36 out of 38 touchdowns on that team. And it was one of those things where we just swept under the rug because there's so many other things and so many other storylines to talk about. And I'm like, y'all got to really realize that when you're making comparisons, one, don't make a rookie comparison like Kyler Murray saying he's the next Russell Wilson, because he ain't even close. Sure. He got a long way to go. And when I stand on this table and say, Russell Wilson is just as good, maybe even better than Aaron Rodgers, don't scoff at me. Actually, just look at the numbers and make a decision for yourself. That's all I'm saying. Russell Wilson needs to be appreciated.
No doubt. I think I like your point about the money, but when you don't have Tom Brady on that list and you have those other quarterbacks on the list, I don't know if that equals respect. I know it does in a lot of ways. It's almost like comforts are taken for granted, like warmth, hot water,
utilities,
roof over your head,
and things like Russell Wilson and doing. It's become normal behavior to have 36 touchdowns in 38 games, and it's the over familiarity of what Russell Wilson does year in, year out. I don't know how to change that about him. I'm glad you think we talk about him enough on the show. I personally don't, but it is because we are living in a different world.
Well, stop the love fest. He's going to have to win a Super Bowl, too. You know what I mean?
Con Ed of quarterbacks is what we're saying, right?
Sure.
That's his new nickname.
Thursday Night Football, the defending NFC champion Rams take on the Seahawks in Seattle. We are all rivals here. Thursday Night Football, 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox.
I heard the uniforms are back for Seattle.
Yeah?
I heard the green ones are coming out. Is that right? Yes, I did.
Ghostbusters?
I'm still laughing to myself at you showing me Pete Carroll on the sideline during Angry Runs.
Oh, my God. Chris Carson ran somebody over, and Chris Carroll was doing cartwheels. He's the best.
You can see it at 8 on Fox. Now let's open up the whole NFC discussion here. Zoom out. A lot of good teams here since the Saints lost quarterback Drew Brees. Backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater's led the team to impressive victories. They had wins over the Seahawks, aforementioned, and the Cowboys. So do we feel confident saying the NFC will go through New Orleans?
It's a wild thing right now, and I'll put myself down after raising myself up. I did not have the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs this year. No fault of their own. I just thought they've been doing so well with injuries. The injury gods have not struck them down over the last few years. Sure enough, they do this year. Drew Brees goes out, and look what happens. They're still winning. I think the ultimate test is those 8 teams you just threw up. If I had to bet on one, all of them, the Bears, the Eagles, Cowboys, to host the NFC title game, I think it's the Saints. I mean, it's close. It's the field, but I will go with the Saints just because Brees comes back, and they've been holding down the fort. It's crazy. Sean Payton, they're 14 years. You know how easy it is to tune out a coach? Even great coaches, Mike McCarthy, people like that, they're still listening. 14 years, this might be his best performance so far. I go New Orleans.
You know who else they're listening to? Drew Brees on the sideline. Watching that game this past weekend.
So engaged.
So engaged. Very active. Microphone on and the earpiece in, and he's sitting there. He's talking to the coach, and he's trying to communicate with Teddy Bridgewater. And I think having that luxury of a guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame, the all-time leading passer on the sideline, making sure that Teddy Bridgewater doesn't get overwhelmed in some of these moments that are going to come. I'm right there with you, Kyle. A close second, I'll go ahead and throw out San Francisco. Until they prove to me that they're not the team that is 3-0, I'm going to show them love. Let's give them the flowers while they can smell them. But at 3-0, I feel like Kyle Shanahan is building something special. But, yeah, the Saints are doing it.
Saints have been really impressive. Last 2 weeks, that's incredible. To beat the Seahawks in Seattle, then this Dallas team. I would just like to say, take a moment here. I know we're prisoners of the moment, and the Rams looked really bad on Sunday. But 2 weeks ago, Drew Brees did not go out because of some non-contact injury.
Good call.
Drew Brees was knocked out for a couple weeks because Aaron Donald broke through that offensive line and destroyed his thumb. That's what happened there.
That's
and
facts.
The rest of the game was all Rams. So
I can't jump on the Rams right now.
It's very hard. It's very hard. They don't look like they did last year.
Not right.
And yet
they're 3-1.
3-1, and they beat the Saints the last 2 times they've played. They beat them in New Orleans, whether you want to say it's because of the Nicole Roby-Coleman, or they beat them this year earlier in the season. So they're the reigning conference champions. Look, I am not sold on the Rams right now. But does it go through New Orleans? It's got to go through L.A. first. They beat them the last 2 times.
How is this an advantage that they have a short week going into Seattle after such a brutal loss and upset for Sean McVay and the boys?
Well, the fact that that taste is still in your mouth. Sometimes the longer you wait, the quicker you forget about what just happened. What I loved about short weeks is that you're still kind of angry.
Okay.
You're dealing with that
Keep the tape
loss.
on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that feeling that they have, that they can go out right now and wash that disgusting taste of taking
I'll ask
that
all
loss.
3 of you, how much less confident do you feel about them going to Seattle today than you did maybe last Thursday? To me, my entire perspective on the Rams changes when you get smacked around there by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in your own building.
Seeing a 55 next to the Tampa Bay logo in the Coliseum was tough. tough. Look, it's like they got a virus, a computer right now, that they got to clean that thing, get some Norton antivirus or something. Something's buggy with the Rams.
We'll dig into the rest of the NFC in a bit. Who's been the most pleasant surprise so far this season? Let's just be pleasant.
Okay.